Come join Melissa and her guests on the Chats from the Blog Cabin podcast. From North Carolina, this podcast will have you feeling like you've known these folks for years. Listen in as they chat about life, culture, current events, and more, all with a special Southern flair. Curl up with your favorite beverage and get ready to be entertained. Tune in now for a unique experience that's fun and insightful.
Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Chats from the Blog Cabin, the show where I virtually invite people into the Blog Cabin to chat about life. And this month, the month of March, is Women's History Month. And during this month, I'm highlighting only women that have either inspired me or I'm giving a little bit of history lesson as well. And I want to start today off with a quote, and I'm hoping this person that I'm interviewing, Susie, will definitely get the quote. You are beautiful not because of what you have to give, but because of who you are. And Susie, do you know who wrote that?
I do know who wrote that. Yes.
And who wrote that, Susie?
Well, I wrote it, and it's a quote that I absolutely believe as I look at another woman standing across from me. And so many times we feel like that what we have to give or what we bring to the table is what makes us beautiful. But honestly, it is who you are. It is your very soul, your very being. It's the way God created you that makes you stand out.
So now that we know you wrote it, Susie or Suzanne Eller, tell us a little about yourself so that people get to know you.
So friends call me Susie, so please do. I have been writing now for forever. This could be a history lesson too. I have been writing for well over 25 years, and I always knew that I wanted to write. And there came a point where I had breast cancer for the first time that I realized that we always don't have one day. So I took a leap of faith and began to write, and that transformed into being able to speak, to do a podcast. But more importantly than all of that, I'm a mom, a wife, a gaga to 6 beautiful humans. And I live in gorgeous Northwest Arkansas, where I get to see the lake every day. So that's my life.
Oh, get to see the lake every day. I would love that.
Every day.
Now, Susie, I connected with Susie, it's been 2 years ago, when she did a Writer for Life group, and I was part of the group. And I really bonded with Susie because I was writing, didn't feel like I was supposed to be writing, didn't feel like I was worthy enough to be writing. And I remember the one time when we were going through everybody's writing, and you had gone through somebody right before me, and I clicked off because I felt like I wasn't worthy, that my words were not. And that's what touched me so much, is that you reached out afterwards and said, hey, I understand what's going on. It was trauma. Yeah. You were going through trauma and you were trying to kind of heal from it. But that just touched my heart. And that, to me, I mean, I had seen you the year before at Proverbs 31 Ministry She Speaks. And I was like, oh, I have to know more about her. And then when you did the Writer for Life, I was like, I have to be part of that group.
Thank you.
Just you actually reaching out and showing that compassion, where some other people would probably said, whatever, she just didn't want to hear feedback. But to hear the compassion from your voice, to understand what I was going through.
You know, Melissa, I feel like it was kind of a critical moment for you. And I think it's one that a lot of us can understand, is that, when God calls us to do something, we tend to take our eyes off of his calling because we're human. And we look at ourselves and think, Lord, are you sure you meant me? Because we see the baggage we've brought in. We see our life experiences. We sometimes look at other women and feel like somehow that maybe they're the ones that should have been chosen. And so I understood what was happening. I remember Holly and I were together, my friend Holly Garth and she was actually at that time coaching with me. And she was like, oh, she must have got cut off. And I said, no, that was not a cut off. That was a critical moment. And so it's really important that one of us, and I think it's going to be me because I got it, needs to reach out and just remind her of whose she is. and remind her that her words matter and that we're not here to tear down. We're here to come alongside shoulder to shoulder so that her words can go out into the world. And I wish I could say that I've never experienced that myself, but I identified it because I have. I have. And I think that's the enemy's voice that comes in at that beautiful moment and says, I don't think you can do this. And we get to push back. And sometimes we need a friend to help us push back and say, I'm sorry, your voice does not get to intrude right now because God has called me to do something and I'm going to get back in there. And you did get back in there.
Yeah. It took me a while because I still had to heal, but for you to reach out, that to me told me that, you know, I was in the right place at the right time, that yours and Holly's coaching was so amazing. I mean, I may not shown up to all but I did watch the replays because, you know, I think Wednesdays were hard. But just for you to reach out showed, and the compassion that you showed me was just like, I will honestly always remember that, because after that, I started writing, but I took my story in a whole different approach because I'm like, when I wrote, it was like, so much hatred was coming out of me and so much, it's like I dumped everything out and I'm like, I don't want it to go this way.
Yeah. Well, I remember a long time ago, man, I was like a teenager. And I remember looking around at all of the teenagers that were around me, and it seemed like that they knew everything about scripture, that they had this foundation that I had missed. And I remember like I was going out the door. So I was checking out. It just wasn't digitally. I was literally leaving the church, and a pastor's wife stopped. Her name was Jean. And she said, "Where are you going, Susie?" And I said, I don't fit here. I don't fit here. And she just pulled me into her arms and said, "You absolutely fit here." And the same moment, different timing, different situation. But I really do think that it's such a privilege for women, whether older, younger, same age, to be able to come alongside somebody in those moments and say, no, you do fit. Yep. This is where you belong. There's a seat for you.
Yeah, for sure. Because I honestly never felt like I fit in. And for you to actually take the time out and say, because I even wrote you, I'm like, this is what was going through my mind. Because I was writing as you were critiquing the other person. And then I actually wrote it all out to you. And you're like, it's good. You're good.
It's okay. It's okay. Yeah.
And to validate someone's feelings is amazing. And so was that something that you've always done, or is that something that as you've gone through your walks of life, you've learned better to do it?
I feel like that there were others who did that in critical moments for me. And I think that when you've walked through something and you've experienced it, it better equips you then to know when it's happening with someone else. And so I'm just grateful for the women behind me who may not have had any idea what was going on or why I was struggling, who just stepped up beside me. I think that's very scriptural. One of the things when my ministry is called Living Free Together, and what I say, my tagline is that healed women scoop up other women, and we run to the cross together. And I believe that with my whole heart. So it's something that was given to me that I didn't always know how to receive, but then there came a time where I could give it to.
And I love that. What made you decide you're writing? Most writers, they were like, they want to just write their books and they keep their heads down and just write. But you decided to pour into other writers and start coaching them. What made you decide to do that? Because I think that's amazing.
It's hard. It's isolated. It's hard. There's obstacles like crazy. The industry I've been doing this now for 27 years. And so the industry has changed so much. And I feel like if I had somebody in the beginning that I could have shaved off 5 years off of my journey. Because if somebody else who has already gone that direction, they've had a machete, they're in the woods, they're carving and cutting down this path, it means that it makes it clear for someone else. And so, plus I find delight in it. Like I really do love doing it. I'm right now working with a couple of coaching clients, and very different from each other, very different experiences, very different skill sets. And yet this week with both of them, there were one or two just aha moments where suddenly it was clear what they wanted to write. It was clear how to do that. And those moments like light me up. So yeah, so there's joy in it. And then the other part is just, this is not an easy thing to do. And I often have people reach out and they'll say something like, Suze, I want to write a book. And I'm like, awesome. Okay. And then they'll say, and I would like my book to be on the shelf like in 3 months. And I'm like, not ready. You're not ready, because it's a process and it's hard, and there's things to learn. I've been doing it for 27 years because of industry changes. I'm still learning, and I think I always will be.
And that's one thing that I loved about Writer for Life with you and Holly, was the fact that you took us and guided us along. You took our hand and you didn't tell us how to do it, but you helped us navigate the industry. Because if you're trying to write and you're trying to get your book out there, it's changed so much since now that you have Amazon. You can self-publish, you can hybrid publish, you can do all these other things, you know. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the publishing world, how much has changed from the time that you got in to now.
Wow. You know, so 27 years ago was before the internet. So right there. And what happened when my first book was picked up, which was in 2000 is when it was published. The publisher did everything. You know, they did the marketing, they did the publicity, they set up all of the, if you were going to have book signings or if you were going to go to a trade show, they did all of that. That is not something that happens unless you're a top tier author. You know, you have some publicity, you have some marketing, but they're trying to divide that between a lot of different authors and a lot of different genres. So that's one thing, is that the internet has played a huge part in shifting a lot of the workload from the publisher, who does a ton, but it puts a big portion of it on the author, which can be intimidating if you're a writer and really what you want to do is sit in your yoga pants and your t-shirt and your, you know, ponytail and just write. This brings in marketing. This brings in building platforms. This brings in creating communities that wrap around your message. So that's one. I think the second thing is the, and this is also internet and social media. There was a period like 3 or 4 or 5 years ago where having huge numbers was a factor. And now it has shifted, because if you go to Instagram, for example, or Threads or Substack or wherever, when you go there, honestly, you're taking in so much information that it's rare that one person stands out. So you can have 100,000 followers or numbers and yet have no engagement. So it has shifted from numbers. And honestly, this is something I'm really glad about, because it's more authentic. It has shifted from how many people it says follow you to how many people you actually engage with around this topic. So that's just a couple. I mean, there's myriads of changes.
Yeah, and the internet, and once you figure out the algorithm for one thing, they switch it up, and then you have to go back and learn it all over again.
Yeah. Well, and Melissa, there's a lot of traps that didn't used to happen. And I'll share one trap. One trap can be that you feel like you have to tap dance, strive, work all this time to create a persona or a platform, and you can lose the love of what God originally called you to do. It can become about that. So keeping your why you started doing this in the first place, front and center, is really important. And I would say with coaching, individual coaching, a lot of what I do is to shift the perspective. Yes, that's important, and we're going to address it. But first, why? Why did you want to do this? What is your heart behind this? What is the message? If you could stand on a street corner for the next 5 years and talk and say, this is what I truly believe and I'm passionate about. If you can tap into that, and then we'll take care of all of this other stuff that goes around that.
Yeah, that is so good. We need to take a brief commercial break, but we'll be right back.
People welcomed me and they knew the pain of the journey that we'd been on because they'd been there too.
Other Parents Like Me is an online community, peer-led, for parents with kids struggling with mental health and or substances.
It's a space that's safe. Feels like I can actually share what's going on.
We offer 15 daily support groups per week and live speaker talks on Thursdays, as well as a monthly expert panel.
We also have a resource hub that has a toolkit. This includes over 1,000 articles, podcasts. There's a glossary with the most recent and relevant terms. And we have a directory that's been vetted.
The overwhelming feeling when we're sitting in a meeting and I'm telling my story and I see others shaking their head, tears falling, they understand this roller coaster and they're along for the ride.
And we are back chatting with Susie Eller, who is one of I'm so excited that she agreed to do this because she was one of the very first people I thought of when I wanted to do Women's History Month, because you inspire me so much and you've helped me so much in my writing. So let's get back to, how did Writer for Life start? I mean, because you and Holly started it. Now Holly's gone off writing her major book that she's writing.
Yes.
How did that idea form?
So I actually, Holly and I were having lunch, and I have always loved coaching. I was a writer, coach, mentor with Compel under Proverbs 31 for 14 years. Worked with Jerry Jenkins as one of his writing mentors, not for him, but for his students, under Writing for the Soul for 6 years. One of the things that I saw about those beautiful programs is that there was not really an end date. There was you continued to learn, you continued to grow. It was kind of like walking into a mega church and there being a myriad of things you could learn, which is awesome. It's really, those are great programs. But I wanted to create something different. I wanted to create something where there was a beginning and a launch. Like, you come in and you're not going to be a member for life. My goal is to make you a writer for life. And that means there's a lot of ways to write. There's a lot of ways to communicate. And so whether that is now you're writing books, later it's a podcast or a mix of the two, or you're doing a Substack, or it's, Reels, or eventually it's the newsletter in Independent Living. Like, if you're a writer, then there are words inside of you that honestly, for the rest of your life, can come out of you in one form or the other. And so what I wanted to do was to create you as a writer for life. Like, you have the tools and the confidence to say, I'm not real sure which path I'm going to take, but I'm going to be on this path for the rest of my life. And so for right now, maybe that looks like a book project, or maybe that looks like I'm going to freelance and write articles, or, I want to do a podcast like Melissa's doing, or like Susie does. And so we hammered it out and did that for a couple of years. Holly is right now writing, she's under an intense deadline. She's writing a book that I think is going to be she's written 30 books, but I think this is going to be her breakout book, in the sense that she is in new territory and she is writing beautiful, hard things. And at one point I looked over at her and I said, you need to just be writing, right? And she said, I do. So she has stepped away, but this is such a passion of mine that I've continued, and I'm bringing in other friends that are helping me as we do this.
Do you think Holly would ever come back and work with you again after she gets through that hard writing right now that she's writing?
I don't know. We do a podcast together. So we always say that as long as we can meet twice a month for chips and queso, we're good. I don't know.
So what made you decide was it your calling that God put on your life to write, or was it just like, have you always been a writer, or are you just like, I'm just going to start and take a leap of faith?
I mean, from the time that I was a child. And so when I was really young, my little brothers would climb in bed with me at night. I'm 10 years older than one, and then I've lost a brother, but I was 6 years older than he was. And our home was a little bit messy, a little bit chaotic. And they would come in the middle of the night, and I would tell them stories. I would write stories. So funny thing, Melissa, is that this is not funny in the sense that but there was a crisis that actually put me into writing. I was 31 and a mother of 3, and I found out that I had stage 3 cancer. And so I was working at an engineering firm. I was writing about wastewater treatment plants and bridges and dams. And I decided when I hit that mark that they said I might not hit, which was the 5-year, that I was never going to write about wastewater treatment plants again. So I went into I started learning about writing. And then I also, when I got my first agent, she picked me up because she loved my fiction. And I loved fiction. That was actually going to be my plan. At 25 years later and 15 nonfiction books later, thousands of articles that are nonfiction and podcasts, I still had not written fiction until this year.
And now you're writing on your Substack too.
I had a debut novel that just came out. And I'm writing, what I'm doing is kind of a novel idea. I'm just having fun with it. Is I am sharing 1 to 2 chapters every week on Substack and growing a whole new community. It's really weird because I have these people that I've been writing for 20 something years, and now we're building a whole new community. And some of those others were diehards. They've come over with me, but most people like one genre or the other. And so it is a whole new audience. And then once I write the whole book on Substack, I'm releasing it on Amazon. And so last week, Generous Orchid, which is a historical novel, came out on Amazon, and the response has been really fun.
And here is a link to all of Susie's books, because I just went in because of all your books. I'm like, I'm just going to go to Amazon and grab the link and put under her name every book that you've ever written.
That's a good way to do it.
A lot easier than having to do that. How different was it, though, for you to write fiction than nonfiction?
It was, it's the difference between work and play. So nonfiction, I love because I love ministry and I love people. And it's more work in the sense that it's very intentional. It's too different. It's just too different, like basketball and hockey. I mean, they're so different. Fiction has just been fun. But I've been pregnant with fiction for a quarter of a century. And so you carry a baby for 25 years, it's time. It's time to deliver. And it has been so much fun. In fact, this morning, I walk every morning with a group of women. And one of the women came around the corner to meet me. We go out early, like at 6:15. And she was like, I just read chapter so-and-so. And she was telling me about one of the characters and something I did. And she was so over the top enthused. And it was, I delighted in that because it's a different feel than anything I've ever done.
Yeah, because you get to be a little bit more creative. It doesn't have to be so pat and dry. You can just take literary writing.
It's powerful. And I would say, though, that every book that I've ever written, except for Prayer Starters and Come With Me devotional. So those two, other than those two, all of my nonfiction have always been story driven. And I think it's just true stories. And so it's narrative nonfiction. And I think story is a very important part of it. But being able to allow some characters tell you what their life is and where to go with it is just fun.
I remember when I first, like I said, I knew who you were, but didn't really know who you were until I heard you speak at Proverbs 31. I mean, I had read a couple of your books, but I never really connected because, like Holly too, like I read a couple of her books, but never connected who she actually was until, that. But I remember you standing on stage at Proverbs 31 as she speaks and talking about how you took that time to take care of your brother because your brother was sick. And I was like, she's lost a sibling to cancer. I've lost a sibling to cancer. And and I was pregnant with my oldest daughter when my sister passed away. And so I was like, I felt like it bonded me with you, that there was something in your story that I just needed at that time. So let's talk about that, being able to just step back and just take a breather to take care of what you need to take care of, and how writing does that for you.
Well, that impacted speaking because my boots needed to be on the ground with my brother and with my mom and dad, who were older and losing a son. So I took everything off my website that had to do with speaking. It's still not there because my boots are still on the ground because I lost my dad a year ago. So I went from my brother to my dad. And ministry is not what we do. It's not that Susie is a writer or a speaker or a podcaster. Ministry is a daily calling, and it's listening for the voice of God right where you're at, and he shows you what he wants you to do. And so the vehicle is different. In one season, it was speaking every other weekend. Then in the last 3 years, it was being present for a brother who was in a really hard place. And then it was being there for my mom as she lost her husband of 60-something years. Now I have a couple of speaking engagements on the calendar for this year, but it's still not on my website because I'm watching grandchildren that are growing up. And honestly, me sitting last Saturday at a basketball game in the Boys and Girls Club, watching Josiah play basketball, that was my calling for that day. And so, there's just times that it's not that we interrupt our calling. It's just that our calling, the vehicle for it, changes. So I say this, that our calling is listening for the voice of God daily and saying yes over and over again, wherever you are. So I continued my calling. It just looked different for those seasons.
Yeah. So let's talk about how you navigated those seasons, because you already talked about you were stage 3 breast cancer survivor, and going through that, because that had to be a tremendous weight on you, and how you navigated that season. And then you get through that season, and then what happens with your brother, and then losing your dad, how you navigate those seasons. Because I know there's a lot of people out there.
I had cancer too. I went through cancer a second time during the pandemic, which was all kinds of fun. You're very isolated. And I remember being in the hospital during my second battle with breast cancer, and just asking the Lord, because I had books coming out. My speaking thing was full. This was before Ron went through what he went through. And I remember being in the hospital room and thinking, okay, God, it's a lot. This is a lot to do this again. And I had no idea what was waiting on the other side with my brother. But I just remember the Lord reminding me that every single day, wherever we're at, whoever's standing in front of us, that we have this just beautiful opportunity to reflect the goodness of who God is. And that doesn't have to be me standing on a stage. That doesn't have to be me to be writing, although I did write a book. I did write a book while I was going through cancer that year. That's when Prayer Starters was written. But I think sometimes when we're in the trenches is actually when our best writing comes out, because I think about, let's say that somebody wrote a book about how to help your child sleep, and yet their child came home from the hospital and 2 months later they were sleeping. How does that help the mama who is in year number 2, and they're driving around the car with their child in the car seat with Adele playing with them, trying to get their child to sleep. And they have somebody who has not been in the trenches saying, if you'll just do it A, B, and C, it's going to equal D. Well, listen, if you're in the trenches and you're in a pandemic and you find out your brother is sick too, and you're isolated, and you're depending upon God, you're depending upon others, and you're writing a book called Prayer Starters, Talking with God Through Hard Times, that's going to be a book that's authentic. It's going to be genuine. And so somebody else who's walking through it, they're not going to find perfection or formulas. They're going to find somebody who was in the trenches who says, hey, I've been in the trenches, you're in the trenches, let's walk through it together. And it's a totally different book.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's the reason why I navigated more to you and started following you even more once I heard you speak, because I'm like, she gets it. She understands it. She knows what it's like to be in the trenches. She's gone through the worst of the worst, and she's still come out on the other side, and her faith got so much deeper.
Yeah.
And so I love that.
Yeah. Thank you. And it gives permission to wrestle, instead of having all of these, if you do this, then this is going to work out. It doesn't work that way. It really doesn't. So to be able to say it's going to be messy and raw, there's going to be times that your face is in the carpet and you're crying out to God saying, I don't get it. I don't get it, but I trust you. That is when somebody else who's on the other side of that can say, I'm not alone.
Yeah. And I mean, knowing your heart and knowing you like I do now, I mean, it just made me love you even more, because I felt like that you understood, you got it. You wasn't like you were one of these Christian writers that were like trying to create an image and that's all they were. But no, you were real, you were raw, you were human. You were saying, okay, I get it. Especially when you reached out and said, are you okay to me? And I was like, she got it. She understood, because I honestly didn't think anybody was going to reach out, because I didn't feel worthy. And you reached out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you are worthy. I mean, that's just the simple truth. We're all beloved. We're all seen. We're all known. God is incredibly grace-filled and merciful. And we have the opportunity to share that too. And I think we make a mistake, Melissa. There's a lot of it in the world right now, and I won't go deep on this because I don't want to sound critical. But I think sometimes what we present to the world is harsh and rule-bound and legalistic and us versus them. And it's not what I find in Scripture at all. It's not what was given to me by Jesus. And so when we receive it for ourselves, when we really understand that we are beloved, like he pursues us, when we understand that for ourselves, then we can give that to others.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say to somebody who is struggling through a really difficult time, whether it be a mom that is struggling to get her toddler to sleep, someone who's going through a health journey, a health scare like you did multiple times, someone who just feels like they just can't handle it? I mean, because honestly, you have to deal with your health scare, but then you have to deal with your mental health after your scare. So let's talk about that, what you would say to that.
I don't know that I would use words. I think I would use presence. I think that I would just show up. And this is where we have the opportunity to speak life into people without pithy sayings or even using Scripture, which is powerful. Literally be Scripture. Be hands and feet of Jesus. Scrub the toilets. Show up. I had people show up and say, just let me clean your bathroom. And I'm thinking, okay,
Right ahead.
Good. Sure. I had people who showed up, and her name was Jordan, and Jordan said, okay, I'm going to come in a hazmat suit because I went through the pandemic. And she said, I'm going to come in and I'm going to wash your hair. Well, I had tubes and drains coming out of me because I had had a double mastectomy, and I couldn't move a lot. And she came in and my hair was like, it looked like, I don't know, it looked like I had been scrubbed inside out. It was awful. And she came in and she washed my hair and she fixed it and she made it beautiful and she put makeup on because I couldn't lift my arms. And it was presence. It was present. So now not everybody has that. And I have to be, aware of that. But I needed to be able to ask for help and to share that my normal instinct is to put my head down and just push through it. But sometimes we need each other. And so being able to say, and I might call a friend and say, hey, I don't know what you need, but I'm going to show up. And whatever you need, I'll do it. Yeah. And sometimes it's just chatting or talking, because the person that you were the day before the crisis happened, you're still that person. And so being able to just chat and talk or have food or show up, like I said, to put food in the refrigerator or do their laundry, whatever. But yeah.
I love that. Now with the fact that I'm going to go back and allude to something you said earlier about Holly, that you and Holly still meet.
Yeah. Twice a month.
For chips and
queso.
And I love that, because you need that. We need that community. But so often women especially don't reach out for help because they don't want to be, number one, they don't want to be vulnerable to admit that they need help. And number two is they feel like if they're asking for help, there's a fault in them somehow. So how do we get over that?
Well, and there's a third aspect to that too, is you don't want to be rejected because people are busy. And sometimes they can't do that. So whenever I moved from Oklahoma to Northwest Arkansas, I remember walking into the church for the first time, and it was weird because I thought, I don't know a soul. Like, I don't know a single person here. And the old Susie would have waited for somebody else to approach me. But the Susie who realized that not only do I sometimes need help, I always need people, but sometimes people need me, went up and just began to intentionally make a handful of friends and develop that. Holly was one of them. I actually called her because she lived here in Northwest Arkansas. And I said, I don't know if you know me or not. I'm a fellow author. Can we meet? And she said, I do know of you. And yes, we can meet. And we met at the library. We actually made a video that first day, which is hilarious because that's been 15 years ago, I think.
Wow.
And we made I think it was a flip video at the library, which she posted saying, hey, I met Susie. But there's an intentionality to it that is a little bit scary because somebody might say no. And what I would say to you is that if somebody says no, then you keep going and you ask someone else, because not only are they going to be valuable to you, you're going to be valuable to them too. But I'm not going to pretend that that's not scary, because it can be.
Very scary, especially if you're an introvert, until you get to meet people, and then you become an extrovert. Once you meet somebody, you can tell them your whole life story. Yeah. But most of the time, if you're an introvert, that's so hard because you're so critical of yourself.
Yeah. So one of the funny things is I don't have a critical voice in my head. Holly has a huge critical voice, or did have a huge critical voice in her head. And it's been really fascinating because we think we're stuck with that. I have my own things. I have my own quirks, my own things. But Holly's she had a mean girl that lived in her head, and she's talked about it on the podcast a lot. But that mean girl lives somewhere else now. She doesn't live in Holly's head. And it has been beautiful to watch. And I do think that that's been part of our friendship, is when she would say something, I would be like, What made you say that to yourself? And I remember telling her one time that if I ever heard somebody speak to her like she spoke to herself sometimes, that I would absolutely want to karate chop that person in the throat. And she just said that was kind of a pivotal moment for her, because the mama bear in me came up, was like, I don't know why you just said that to yourself. because she's wonderful, and but isn't that the power of friendship? And there's been times with me that she has said, through presence or through words, she's kind of showed me a different perspective. And I think that's iron sharpening iron. I really do.
Yeah, for sure. And now that I know that she had that mean girl in her head, I'm going to go back and investigate her even more, because I have that mean girl that still lives in my head. There's some days where I can push her down, and then there's some days where she just is, and all I can do to get out of bed some days, because that mean girl is rearing its ugly head.
So the book that she is writing right now, I love that I'm getting to talk about this, because I really do think this is going to be a pivotal book. All of her books are great, but this is going to be pivotal. But the book that she's writing right now is written from this beautiful new perspective of, I am not bad, I am beloved. And it is completely shaking the foundation. A lot of our faith practices and faith doctrines come from the perspective of, we were bad and we became beloved when we became believers. And honestly, like from Genesis to Revelation, the true story is that God so loved the world that he sent. So we were beloved from the very beginning. And anyway, it is going to be a book that I think is going to be pretty. You'll want a copy, Melissa.
Yeah, I will want an autographed copy from Holly.
Yes.
She's one of the coaches too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you a hard question, because I know, just like your children, books are your children as well. What was your favorite book that you've ever written? And I know that's going to be a hard question, because it's hard as a parent.
I think my favorite book, goodness, that is Come With Me. My favorite nonfiction book is Come With Me. And I think the reason that it's my favorite is I was in a point in my faith walk where cynicism was trying to creep in. Not about faith, but not about the church, but about some things that were happening in the world that were linked with God's name, that were kind of stepping on the vulnerable. And I was just really getting to a point of cynicism. So I thought, I'm gonna go into the book of Luke, and I'm gonna just walk with Jesus, like those original 12 disciples did. I'm just gonna walk with him through the book of Luke, and I'm gonna listen to his words. I'm gonna watch his example. And I'm gonna do that for a couple of weeks. It ended up being 2 years, a little over 2 years actually. And I remained there. And that turned into the book, Come With Me, Discovering the Beauty of Following Jesus. And I fell in love with my faith, with my Savior all over again. And I realized that cynicism was not a helpful path to take, but I also needed to deal with it with his help. So that's probably, The Spirit-Led Heart is right there behind it. It's a book that came out after that. And The Spirit-Led Heart was just this beautiful invitation to live the promise of the Spirit within you and how that changes you and changes the world around you. So that's my second favorite.
And if you look up on the screen right now, there's a QR code that's going to take you right over to Susie's books on Amazon. So those two books that she just mentioned, you can just grab them there. I just want to have that up there.
You're so smart.
Now, Susie, I could talk to you forever, but I know you have things to do and I've got things to do. So I'm going to wrap it up. Is there one last thing that either we talked about that you want to reiterate, or something that we didn't talk about that you want to express now? The platform is yours.
Yeah. So I want to go back to the moment you talked about when your words were being introduced for the first time to a group of women. And I want to say to that person who's listening right now that is absolutely terrified to take a step toward her calling, whatever that might be, because of the fear of what somebody else might say or do. And I just want to encourage you and say how brave you are, how courageous you are to do that, to say yes to that. And that the learning curve that you're getting ready to experience, we all experience, and there's beauty and value in that. So I just would love to put my arm around her and say, go for it. Go for it. You're going to learn. You're going to stumble. You're going to fall. You're going to get back up. But if God is the one that's asking and inviting you to do it, he will walk with you through it. So take that step.
And I love that. Now tell people where they can find you at, because I have all your links. Tell me which one
You do
want
have
first.
all my links. I think the best place to go just to start is my website, which is Suzanne with a Z, SuzanneEller.com or TSuzanneEller.com. Both of them take you there. And there you'll find books and links and resources and all the things. So yeah, go there and it will take you everywhere else. And I'd love to see you on Substack, because like I said, that's a whole new community. I've just started building that little community. And if you're on Substack, look me up and let me follow you, and you can follow me.
Yep. And I will say, guys, if you ever have a chance, if you even are even thinking about writing a book, you need to get with Susie. Holly too, if Holly comes back to coaching, but she's going to pour into you, and you're going to become a better writer. I mean, yes, I did flake out because of the trauma that I was going through. But after I went through your course, or I had 2 books. I was in 2 books. I was in the Proverbs 31 ministry thing yesterday when you were talking about Compel. I was one of the winners, and I won a social media challenge for Compel as well. It's like once you feel someone's in your corner, you feel like you can actually go and do it. And that's what I felt for you. And I wanted to take this time to say thank you to you and to Holly for opening up your hearts to us.
Sure. And what I would say too, Melissa, is that you're now in your corner. And that's a beautiful thing. When we transition, we need people around us. We need God. We also need to be in our own corner, and that sometimes takes a little bit of time. But when you become in your own corner and you see yourself the way that God sees you, it just allows you to go with confidence, not ego. You're totally dependent upon God, but it allows you to go with confidence in how he sees you.
Yeah, for sure. And Susie, thank you so much for coming on and for agreeing to come on, because I, out of the blue, just messaged you and asked you, would you come on? And you didn't know at the time that I was talking about women that inspire me, because you've held my hand and walked along this writing journey with me. And so I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything that you've done for me.
Thank you, Melissa.
All right, guys. I will share in the show notes everywhere you can find Susie, Substack's books, everything. I'll even highlight the 2 books that she said were her favorite, and as well as the new fiction one that she just posted on Amazon. But until next time, guys, bye.